And today is a momentous day. Star Trek officially is turned 50 years old. That's right, on September 8th of 1966, Star Trek debuted on NBC and changed the world. Okay, well, maybe they didn't change the world, but it still has had a huge effect on an entire generation. Not because it was a TV show that was mostly about, space and stuff, but it was actually a show, yes, that did have a lot of space stuff in it, but it actually snuck in a lot of social commentary in television. And that was something that really didn't happen all that much. Most of the TV shows at that time were westerns, and they were about pretty much escapism, right? Well, Star Trek tried to do something different, and I think they succeeded in basically sneaking in a little bit of social commentary. In fact, George Takei, who played Sulu, said that he once feared that Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry had developed a show that was too sophisticated for mass audiences. Yeah. He was like, I don't know if they're going to buy this, man. That's a lot of social commentary in there. Aside from, Captain Kirk and Spock, they had a lot of things that were controversial. Now, Sulu was wrong about that, and no one is probably more happy than he is to have been wrong at this. So some of the controversial moments that I want to go through, for one, is the first interracial kiss on television between Captain Kirk and Uhura, who was a communications officer played by Nichelle Nichols. So that's kind of a big moment, right? And another social commentary episode was about basically a civil war between a race that was, I think, half white on one side, half black on the other, and the other side of the war, they had their colors reversed and they hated each other for it. That was a social commentary on racism. So you could find a lot of social commentary in this series, and not just in the original series, which I didn't watch a ton of, to be honest with you. I'm more of a Next Generation guy, as well as Deep Space Nine, all that. I pretty much like them all. So, don't get after me for that. Because you can find good things in all the different series if you look hard enough. And so I do want to go through, and I do want to talk about the impact that the Star Trek that I grew up with, which was Next Generation, had on me. Now, I've got a lot of fond memories of my youth, and I would actually watch Star Trek The Next Generation with my dad. And we would do so. We would watch it after we watched Beavis and Butthead. So I had a very, I had a lot of different sources of entertainment. Okay, when I was young, and those were some of the best memories that I'd had. Sitting there watching The Next Generation with my dad. Other thing is that I would go and go to my grandparents' house, for example, that had a VCR in the back, if you could remember those, with some of the best Star Trek episodes put on one tape. And I still remember at least a couple of them. One was Yesterday's Enterprise, and the next one was The Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2. I used to watch the crap out of both of those episodes. And so they had a big impact on my childhood because Star Trek is more of like a multicultural look. I mean, you had, on the original series, you had Chekhov, who was Russian, you had Sulu, who was Japanese, you had Uhura, who's obviously African-American, and, Spock, who was an alien. All working together. There was no racism, there was no racial strife. They were all a team on that show. And when you go to Next Generation, it was sort of the same thing. You had Geordi LaForge, who was an African-American. You had Worf, that was a Klingon, okay, and played by an African-American. Once again, Michael Dorn. And so you had these different people with different backgrounds that are aliens that are suddenly working together. They're as a community. And it got you to see different perspectives. It got you to see that we could all work together and that we could all work alongside each other peacefully and to get things done. And that's sort of the biggest lesson that I had taken from Star Trek in my youth and The Next Generation. And look, Next Gen had a lot more social and political commentary put into it as well than the original series had. And so, watching that is kind of how you get interested in looking at these social, political, and ethical dynamics and dilemmas. And that's what this show did for me when I was growing up. I think it's part of the reason that I'm as progressive as I am. And that's a big impact. And it hadn't just had this big impact on me. Going back to the original series, it inspired a lot of people to get into science and to get into technology. There are a lot of astronauts or people that work at NASA that can go back and look and say, I was inspired by watching the adventures of James T. Kirk on the Enterprise. That inspired me. A lot of technology that we have is also inspired by the imagination of Star Trek. Mobile phones, the flip phones, right, were the old Star Trek communicators. Who isn't taking a flip phone and did the noise, right? I know I have. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have too. You also had the tablets and stuff that were made from the pads in The Next Generation. All these different technologies that are inspired by imagination, by this show. Star Trek has been a big part of our culture and a big part of my life. And to see that it's turned 50 and it continues to go strong is something that I absolutely love. Now, some of you might disagree with the direction that the new series and the new movies have taken, and that's a valid criticism, right? And I would like to see, the new series that's coming out hopefully get back to that original formula that worked in doing social and political commentary inside of these adventures in space. That's what I want to see, because that's what I originally fell in love with when it came to Star Trek. So, happy birthday, Star Trek. 50 years. Holy shit. To boldly go where no one has gone before.